What's up, everyone? It's Tech Trooper 64, and today we are going to be looking at a rumor, which was actually a leak at the same time, that Nintendo Switch development files, pictures, and Devkit information was leaked online today. Oh, yeah. So it looks like that a new thread popped up on the Switch section of Reddit with very interesting images and information about Nintendo's new hardware. Someone apparently seemingly managed to get a hold of several files in development images and new shots of the Nintendo Switch when it was known as a Nintendo NX, revealing information about the Switch system, including specs. While some content may be outdated, there's no question that there's a good deal here that's still relevant and applies to the Switch's retail version. There are currently 3 files online. There's the NX overview, the system features guide, and the SDev quick start document. Now, I'm going to be going over just the more important details that were found inside the documents. So, without further ado, let's take a look inside. So the first cool feature is that the HD Rumble that Nintendo has been advertising for their Joy-Con controllers has a technical name called the Linear Resonant Actuator. And in handheld mode, the Nintendo Switch will have a lock screen similar to a smartphone. Now, you know how like on your phone, on your iPhone and Android, you just need to swipe the screen to unlock it? Well, I guess it's not true now for iPhones, but I know for Androids, you swipe your screen. So the Switch is going to have that too. That's actually pretty cool in my opinion, because then it prevents you opening your Switch and then your game is just playing in the background, and then you could lose your game potentially, depending on what you're playing, of course. The Switch will also have a quick menu, which is something that's been present on Xbox One and PS4 as of late, and it brings features such as, checking what your friends are doing. It also sees what your downloads are doing and other such little things, not main stuff. What's important to note is that you have to hold the home button for 1 second, and then it brings up the quick menu and includes the home menu and any other applications. However, unlike the 3DS, when you do this quick menu, the active software will not be suspended when you open this menu. So it's still running in the background, so that's something to keep in mind. The Switch's keyboard will have a predictive text feature similar to that on iOS and Android. Next, the system settings will allow the user to edit the following settings. It'll allow you to enable or disable airplane mode. It'll allow you to enable or disable Bluetooth, manage Wi-Fi, NFC, screen brightness, screen locking, user settings, creating and editing Mii's, theme management, controller management, and system updates. What's interesting about these, however, in my opinion anyways, is the fact that Nintendo for the first time ever is allowing users to edit or disable Bluetooth. That's pretty cool. Because before, on Nintendo systems, the Bluetooth feature, if it was ever on the system, was always locked away and people could never use it. So I'm glad that finally they are allowing us to do so. Now, it looks like, according to the settings in the system menu, that the Mii's will have more options for your hair, eyebrows, eyes, facial hair, glasses, mouths, and skin. The Mii's will not be stored in the creator's name, their favorites, birthdays anymore. Now, anyone can edit Mii characters regardless which user you're using with. The developers can create and sell season passes for their games, which is kind of a standard in this industry, whether we like it or not. The document also confirms that the chip that the Nintendo Switch is using as an SoC, which is a system on chip, is something similar to NVIDIA's X1 chip. However, it is using Maxwell on the final retail version. There are no plans to provide an internet browser at this point in development. However, developers are able to access Web Applet to display specific websites within their game/app. A maximum of 8 users can be registered on one system at the same time. And finally, this is one feature I know a lot of you have been curious about, and this is, can you add friends and send game invites from the console or from the mobile app only? Well, it's been confirmed now through this Devkit information that yes, you can send them from the console. So it looks like you have some sort of handle or control on the functionality of the online aspect from your console, which is usual nowadays. A Nintendo account can be linked to multiple Nintendo Switches. However, save data is not automatically synchronized. This is something I always had a problem with my Wii U and 3DS, so I hope that they fix this in the future. There are 2 dev kits currently. There's the SDev kit and the eDev kit. The S Devkit has built-in ports and no built-in battery, while the E Devkit resembles the retail product. However, it is in black in color instead of gray. And finally, game cards come in 1GB, 2GB, 4GB, 8GB, 16GB, and 32GB variations. Currently, there is no 64GB versions, but who knows? Nintendo might be nice to developers in the future and might allow more bigger sizes, and I hope they do. And let's talk about the online aspect now. The online aspect includes matchmaking, ranking, and data storing and subscriber. Now, the data storing was something that kind of like spoke out to me, because what this says is that you can actually save any data and save it to the server, and you can even bring it back and use it on any Switch system. So that's pretty cool. And finally, subscriber is a messaging feature based on publish and subscribe pattern. It can be used to post messages on certain topics, poll for posts and certain topics, and otherwise share information within the application. So it essentially does what Miiverse did on the Wii U, but without a whole, application for it. That's going to be kind of interesting how they do that. But anyway. Now let's talk about the actual Switch specs, which I have right here. And also, I will leave a link in the description below if you want to check them out for yourself. When it comes to the CPU, it looks like that the Switch is boasting a 4-ARM Cortex A57 cores, which have a maximum of 2 GHz, an L2 cache of 2 MB, a 64-bit ARM V8, crypto extension enabled. And for the GPU, it looks like it's using a NVIDIA 2nd generation Maxwell architecture, 256 CUDA cores at maximum 1 GHz, and it has 1,024 flops per cycle, or gigaflops, to be more specific. Now, texture is 16 pixels per cycle, and the fill is going to have 14.4 pixels per cycle. Next, the video decoder looks like it'll have an H.265 for essentially 4K at 60 frames a second, and an H.264 at 4K at 60 frames a second. There's also compatibility for VP9 at 4K 60 frames a second, and a VP8 for 4K at 60 frames a second. And also there's MPEG-4, which is MP4 at native 1080p at 120 frames per second, and MPEG-2 at 4K at 60 frames a second. And next, the main memory of the console itself will have 4 GB of RAM, and it'll have 25.6 GB per second bandwidth, and the VRAM will be shared. Next, the system memory itself will have 32 GB inside, and will have a transfer rate of 400 MB per second. That's still not too bad, but I kind of wish it was higher. Anyway, in terms of SD card, it supports microSD, microSD-HC, and microSD-XC. And the wireless LAN it uses is IEEE 802.11, and the USB connection is an option for wired LAN to use through the Ethernet cable. Next, Bluetooth is 4.1 plus LE, and the video output, which I think is very interesting, in my opinion anyways, is native 1080p at 60 frames a second or 4K at 30 frames a second. So the console is indeed capable of 4K. However, what's interesting, the functionality available in the Switch itself at this point in the dev kit is only native 1080p. However, it's worth mentioning it can do 4K. So maybe in the future, Nintendo might unlock that with a patch. Who knows? The audio output is currently sitting at around 192 kilohertz at 24-bit on its 7.1 channels. Currently, it's restricted at 5.1 channels at 48 kilohertz at 16-bit, but that might change later on. The display has a native 720p display at IPS LCD at 6.2 inches. The built-in speakers are stereo speakers at 48 kilohertz at 16-bit at 2 channels. And the touchscreen has a capacitive touchscreen 10-point multi-touch at 1280 by 720 dots. And finally, the brightness sensor is disabled. However, there is one, and that's worth noting. Anyway, guys, that's all the information I have of the Nintendo Switch dev kit leak. What's your thoughts on this? To be honest, and myself, I don't really care about the specs, but I do care that we can finally know about the online. We can finally know about stuff like system storage. We can know the stuff that Nintendo's just simply not telling us. So I'm glad this information leaked out one way or another. But anyway, guys, let me know in the comments down below what your thoughts on this is. Don't forget to rate, comment, favorite, and subscribe, and I'll see you guys next time. Peace.